The crystal chandelier at Bistro Laurent cast elegant shadows across our family table, but the atmosphere was anything but refined. I sat quietly in my vintage blazer and paint-stained jeans, watching my family celebrate Mom's 55th birthday while simultaneously dissecting my life choices with surgical precision. I'm Natalie Morrison, though my family had taken to introducing me as our daughter who's still figuring things out. At 31, I was the disappointment who'd chosen art over accounting, who lived in a converted warehouse loft instead of a suburban mansion, who drove a paint-splattered van instead of a luxury sedan. The black sheep who spent her days creating sculptures that my family couldn't understand and didn't value. "So Natalie," my sister-in-law Jessica said with false sweetness, cutting into her perfectly plated salmon, "are you still doing that pottery thing?" "Sculpture," I corrected gently, taking a sip of water. The wine was too expensive for my supposed budget, according to the concerned looks I'd been receiving. Derek, my older brother and the family's golden child, leaned back in his chair with that familiar smirk. He'd built a successful accounting firm and never let anyone forget it. "Still playing with crayons?" He laughed, loud enough to draw glances from nearby tables. "Grow up and get a real job." Mom patted my hand sympathetically, though her eyes held disappointment. "Darling, you know we support your hobby. But wouldn't you be happier with some stability? Derek knows several firms that would hire you." "Art isn't a hobby, Mom," I said quietly. "It's my career." Dad scoffed, adjusting his expensive watch. "Career? Natalie, you're 31 years old. When are you going to stop this fantasy and join the real world?" Jessica nodded sagely. "We're just worried about you. Living in that warehouse district, driving that old van. It can't be safe. Or profitable," Derek added with a laugh. "What did you make last year? 5,000? 10,000? I smiled and said nothing. They had no idea about the private sales, the international collectors, the gallery showings in New York and London. I'd learned long ago that sharing my successes with this family only led to demands for loans and investments they'd never repay. "There's still time to change direction," Mom continued, clearly thinking she was being helpful. "Remember how talented you were with numbers in school? Derek says his firm is expanding into the 21st century, hopefully," I murmured. Derek's face reddened. "My firm is one of the most successful in the state. We handle accounts worth millions." "I'm sure you do," I replied calmly. "The Morrison name means something in this city," Dad added, his voice taking on that lecturing tone I remembered from childhood. "Your great-grandfather built our reputation on solid business principles. Hard work, practical choices, real value." I thought about the sculpture I'd finished last week, the one already sold to a private collector for more than Derek's annual salary. About the commission pieces in my studio, each worth more than this restaurant's yearly revenue. About the gallery in Chelsea that had been courting me for months. "You could still make something of yourself," Jessica said, probably thinking she was being encouraging. "It's not too late to start over." Derek checked his Rolex ostentatiously. "Speaking of making something, I just closed a deal with Morrison Industries. Biggest client we've ever landed. Maybe you've heard of them, Natalie. They're kind of a big deal." I nearly choked on my water. Morrison Industries was one of my most important clients, though they didn't know Derek was related to me. I'd been working on a series of pieces for their headquarters for 6 months, each sculpture commissioned for more than Derek's entire annual revenue. "Never heard of them," I lied smoothly. "Well, you wouldn't move in those circles," Derek said condescendingly. "The CEO is Alexander Morrison. Tech billionaire. Forbes list. You know, successful people." The irony was delicious. Alexander Morrison and I had been discussing art and philosophy for months. He'd become not just a client but something approaching a friend. He had no idea I was related to his new accountant. "I'm sure he's very impressed with your services," I said carefully. Mom leaned forward conspiratorially. "Derek, didn't you say Mr. Morrison is single? Maybe he'd be interested in meeting Natalie. A successful man like that might be just what she needs to get her life on track." I nearly laughed out loud. Alexander and I had dinner planned for next week, though my family would have been shocked to know it wasn't the first time. "Mom," Derek said with exaggerated patience, "a man like Alexander Morrison doesn't date struggling artists. He moves in circles where people have actual achievements. Real accomplishments," Dad agreed. "Not finger paintings." Jessica nodded. Perhaps Natalie could take some business classes. Learn to present herself better. First impressions matter in the professional world. I was about to respond when the restaurant's front door opened with a flourish. A familiar figure strode in, commanding immediate attention from the wait staff. Alexander Morrison, tech billionaire and art enthusiast, swept into Bistro Laurent like he owned it. Which, knowing his portfolio, he very well might. His eyes scanned the dining room and landed on our table. His face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Natalie," he boomed across the restaurant, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed dining room. "My favorite artist." Every head in the restaurant turned to stare. The maitre d' practically materialized at Alexander's side, bowing and scraping as he guided the billionaire toward our table. My family sat frozen, forks halfway to their mouths, as one of the most powerful men in the city approached us with obvious familiarity. Alexander reached our table and, without hesitation, leaned down to kiss my cheek in the European fashion. "I was hoping I'd run into you. Are you ready to discuss that $50 million commission we talked about?" Derek's fork clattered to his plate. The sound seemed to echo through the suddenly silent restaurant. "Alexander," I said warmly, standing to properly greet him. "What a lovely surprise. I was just having birthday lunch with my family." His eyebrows rose with interest. "Family? How wonderful." He turned to my shocked relatives with his trademark charming smile. "I'm Alexander Morrison. Natalie's been working on the most extraordinary sculpture series for my headquarters. Absolutely revolutionary work." Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Dad had gone completely pale. Jessica looked like she might faint. Derek, ever the opportunist, recovered first and shot to his feet. "Mr. Morrison. Derek Morrison, Morrison Accounting. We spoke yesterday about your quarterly reports." Alexander glanced at Derek with mild interest. "Ah yes, the accountant. Small world." He turned back to me with obvious preference. "Natalie, I've been thinking about our conversation regarding the Tokyo installation." The cultural ministry is beside themselves with excitement. "Tokyo?" Mom whispered. 50 million? Dad croaked. "The Mori Art Museum is hosting a retrospective of Natalie's work next spring," Alexander continued, clearly enjoying himself. "Though I suppose you already know that. Must be very proud of your daughter's international recognition." The silence at our table was deafening. Around us, other diners were whispering and pointing. Several people had their phones out, no doubt recording the interaction between the famous billionaire and the artist they just discovered was related to the mortified family at table 12. "Perhaps I could join you for a moment?" Alexander asked, though he was already signaling the waiter for another chair. I never pass up the chance to meet the family of someone so talented. As he settled into his seat, I caught Derek's eye. My brother looked like he'd seen a ghost. The same brother who'd been mocking my crayons 2 minutes earlier was now sitting across from a man discussing my $50 million commission. "So," Alexander said, spreading his napkin with practiced ease, "you must tell me what it was like watching Natalie develop her artistic vision. I imagine you have wonderful stories about her early work." Mom struggled to find her voice. Well, she was always very creative." "Creative," Alexander repeated with delight. "What an understatement. Do you know her latest piece sold at Sotheby's for $12 million last month? The bidding war was extraordinary." Jessica made a small choking sound. Derek had gone from pale to green. $12 million. Dad managed. "For one sculpture," Alexander confirmed. "Though that's hardly unusual for Natalie's work. The piece I acquired last year has already tripled in value. Smart investment, even smarter art." He turned to Derek with polite interest. "You're in accounting, I believe? You must appreciate the financial success of your sister's career. Very impressive returns." Derek couldn't seem to form words. This was the same Derek who'd been lecturing me about real jobs and practical choices 5 minutes earlier. "I was just telling the family about your Morrison Industries account," I said innocently. Derek was quite excited about landing such a prestigious client. Alexander's smile became slightly sharper. "Yes, well, we'll see how that works out. I do so value competence in my business relationships." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Derek's face went from green to gray. "Natalie," Alexander continued, "I hate to interrupt your family celebration, but I have some exciting news." The Venice Biennale has accepted your installation proposal. You'll be representing the United States Pavilion. If Derek had looked shocked before, now he appeared catatonic. The Venice Biennale was to the art world what the Olympics were to sports. It was the kind of recognition that secured artistic legacies. That's wonderful news, I said warmly. Though I'll need to finish the Morrison Industries series first. Of course. Take all the time you need. Art can't be rushed. He glanced around the table at my stunned family. I imagine you'll all be attending the opening in Venice? It's quite the honor to have a family member selected for such a prestigious exhibition. Mom nodded frantically, though she clearly had no idea what the Venice Biennale actually was. Alexander's phone buzzed discreetly. He glanced at it and sighed. I'm afraid I need to take this call. European markets, you understand. He stood, kissing my cheek again. Dinner Thursday? I'll have my assistant make reservations at Le Bernardin. Perfect, I agreed. He shook hands around the table, pausing at Derek. Pleasure meeting you all. Derek, I look forward to reviewing those quarterly reports. Accuracy is so important in financial matters, wouldn't you agree? Derek managed a weak nod. After Alexander left, trailing restaurant staff and lingering stares, our table fell into stunned silence. The waiter approached cautiously to refill our water glasses, clearly aware that something significant had just transpired. Finally, Mom found her voice. Natalie, $50 million? For one commission, I confirmed. Though there are others. The art world is surprisingly lucrative when you reach a certain level. Venice Biennale? Dad asked weakly. Think of it as the World Cup of contemporary art. Very selective. Very prestigious. Jessica was staring at me like I was a stranger. You're famous? In art circles, yes. I've been featured in Art News, Art Forum, the New York Times art section. My work is in several major museum collections. Derek finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Why didn't you tell us? I considered the question carefully. Would you have believed me? Or would you have accused me of fantasizing again? The truth hung in the air between us. We all knew the answer. Besides, I continued, I tried to share my successes early on. Remember when I got my first gallery showing? You all missed it because Derek had a golf tournament. When I sold my first piece for 6 figures, Dad told me it was probably a fluke. When the Times reviewed my exhibition, Mom said she hoped I wasn't getting a big head about my little hobby. They had the grace to look ashamed. The warehouse loft you're so concerned about? I continued. I own the entire building. It's worth about $8 million. The van you think is unsafe. It's custom designed for transporting valuable artwork. Cost more than Derek's BMW. Derek winced. I don't live the way I do because I can't afford better. I live this way because it suits my work and my values. I don't need a mansion to prove my worth. Mom reached across the table. Sweetheart, we had no idea. You had no idea because you never asked. You never showed interest in my work, never attended my exhibitions, never bothered to learn about contemporary art or what I was building. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. We thought we were being realistic. Practical. You thought you were being superior, I corrected gently. There's a difference. The waiter approached with dessert menus, but the mood at our table had shifted dramatically. My family was looking at me with new eyes, and I could practically see them recalculating every assumption they'd made about my life. The commission Alexander mentioned, Jessica said hesitantly. $50 million? For a series of 7 large-scale installations. It's a 3-year project that will transform Morrison Industries headquarters into a cultural landmark. And you two are? Mom fished delicately. Friends, colleagues. He's one of the most knowledgeable art collectors I've ever met. We share similar aesthetic philosophies. Derek finally managed to speak. Natalie, I owe you an apology. We all do. I studied my brother's face, looking for signs of genuine remorse versus damage control. Do you, Derek? Or are you just realizing that insulting me might damage your relationship with your biggest client? His face flushed red. That's not. It's exactly what you mean, I said calmly. And that's fine. Business is business. But let's not pretend this is about family suddenly realizing they were wrong. This is about social and financial calculation. Mom looked stricken. That's not fair, Natalie. We love you. I know you love me, Mom. But you don't respect me. There's a difference. I signaled the waiter for the check. Alexander was right about one thing. First impressions matter in the professional world. And you've all made very clear impressions about what you think of my profession. Where are you going? Dad asked as I stood. Back to my studio. I have a $50 million commission to work on. Derek grabbed my arm. Natalie, please. Can't we start over? I looked down at his hand on my sleeve, then met his eyes. Derek, you've spent 5 years mocking my career, my lifestyle, and my choices. Now that you've discovered I'm financially successful, you want to start over. Do you see the problem with that? He released my arm, looking genuinely confused. You don't want to start over because you realize you were wrong about art or because you understand my passion for creating. You want to start over because you're afraid I'll cost you your biggest client. The accuracy of my statement was written all over his face. I pulled out my wallet and placed enough cash on the table to cover the entire bill, plus a generous tip. Happy birthday, Mom. I hope you have a lovely rest of your celebration. As I walked toward the door, I could hear the urgent whispered conversation starting behind me. Damage control, recalculations, new strategies for dealing with the family member who just revealed herself to be worth more than all of them combined. Outside the restaurant, I sat in my paint-splattered van for a moment, letting the irony of the situation wash over me. For years they'd pitied me. Now they'd fear me. Neither reaction had anything to do with who I actually was as a person. My phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. Hope I didn't cause any family drama. Your brother seemed surprised. I typed back, only the good kind of drama. Thank you for the perfect timing. Lunch Thursday to discuss the Tokyo details? Absolutely. And Alexander? Derek really is a competent accountant. Don't fire him on my account. Generous of you. See you Thursday. I started the van and headed back to my studio, where 7 partially completed sculptures waited for my attention. $50 million worth of art that would outlast any family drama, any social calculation, any temporary shift in their perception of my worth. In my rearview mirror, I could see my family still sitting at the table through the restaurant's windows, their heads bent together in intense conversation. Tomorrow Derek would probably call. Maybe Mom would stop by the studio. Jessica might even ask to see my work. But it wouldn't matter. Real relationships aren't built on sudden revelations of financial success. They're built on years of support, understanding, and respect. Things my family had never offered when they thought I needed them. I pulled into my warehouse district, past the converted lofts and artist studios, into the loading bay of my building. $8 million of prime real estate that I'd bought with the proceeds from my finger paintings. Inside, my studio was exactly as I'd left it. Sculptures in various stages of completion, sketches covering the walls, the controlled chaos of serious creative work. This was my real world, not the one my family had tried to push me into. My phone rang. Derek's number appeared on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt with sudden declarations of support or belated recognition. My family would have to decide whether they could learn to respect me for who I'd always been, not just for what they'd discovered I was worth. As for me, I had work to do. 7 installations to complete, a Venice Biennale to prepare for, and a career that had succeeded magnificently without their approval. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's proving yourself right regardless of whether they're watching. 3 months later, I stood in the Morrison Industries headquarters, watching as the final installation was carefully positioned in the main atrium. The sculpture series had exceeded even Alexander's expectations, drawing art critics and collectors from around the world to see the transformation of a corporate space into a cultural destination. Extraordinary, Alexander murmured, standing beside me as we watched the installation team make final adjustments. You've created something that will inspire people for generations. The building's lobby had become a pilgrimage site for art lovers. The 7 sculptures created a narrative flow that guided visitors through a meditation on technology, humanity, and the future. It was, without question, the finest work of my career. The Venice pieces are coming along well, I told him. I think you'll be proud to see the United States Pavilion this year. I wouldn't miss it, though I suspect your family will want to attend as well. Derek had indeed called. Several times. So had Mom and Dad. They'd all expressed interest in learning more about art, and being more supportive. Jessica had even asked if she could bring her children to see my studio. "We'll see," I said diplomatically. "You're being generous considering how they treated you." "I'm being practical," I corrected. "Holding grudges takes energy I'd rather spend on creating." Alexander smiled. "Spoken like a true artist. Focus on the work, let everything else sort itself out." As we watched visitors experiencing the installations, I felt the deep satisfaction that comes from meaningful work. Money was wonderful, recognition was gratifying, but watching people connect with art in a way that expanded their understanding of the world. This was why I'd chosen this path. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Saw the piece in the Times about the Morrison installations. Mom wants to know if you'd like to have dinner this Sunday. No agenda, just family." I considered the invitation. My family had learned an expensive lesson about assumptions and respect. Whether they'd learned it permanently remained to be seen. But Alexander was right. The work was what mattered. Everything else would sort itself out. I typed back, "Sunday works. But I choose the restaurant this time." After all, if we were going to rebuild our relationship, it might as well be in a place that appreciated real artistry. Some victories aren't about proving people wrong. They're about proving yourself right, and then having the grace to share that success with people who are finally ready to understand what they'd been missing all along.